My name is Claudia Sabal. I live here in Groton, Massachusetts, and I am the founder of the Concerned Citizens Against Contamination. Groton is a bedroom town to Boston. Most of the people that live in Groton usually work somewhere in that vicinity. People like to live here because it is a rural community and they like the atmosphere. The people that have lived on the street or lived on the street when this all took place lived here for years and years. They're generational.
Groton was one of our first campaigns. Insco Corporation, Machinery Corporation, used trichloroethylene or TCE to help clean its machinery, and they dumped it illegally. They dumped it out the back. And eventually this TCE flowed into the groundwater supply and contaminated the wells of the Gratuity Road neighborhood.
We found out about the wells being contaminated through the town, as a matter of fact. The Conductor Lab site, which is up the road about a quarter of a mile, was for sale.
When the town of Groton was looking to buy a piece of property around this neighborhood, they identified this contamination, and soon additional testing found out that every well in this neighborhood was contaminated by trichloroethylene. Now, TCE is probably the most infamous for what it did in Woburn, Massachusetts, where in the early 80s, families realized there's a high level of childhood leukemia in the neighborhoods, and further testing by the state showed that there was a connection between the contamination in the water and those childhood leukemias. Happened again in Groton, where the TCE contaminated the groundwater supply, and the state again came in to do study, believing there is a link to the learning disabilities of the children in Groton.
We would get together as a group of just moms getting together for coffee in the morning. We'd put the kids off to school. We'd all get together for coffee in the morning. And we would talk about our children and how we would have to put them down in the afternoon because they would have headaches. And we would look at it and say, why do our children have all these headaches? And never really gave much thought to it until after we found out that the wells were contaminated, and then we all went, wow, maybe this is why. I don't think I had any experience with activism until I started this. I ended up deciding to just take pad and paper and go to each and every household and ask them, did they feel that they had any problems in their household that may have been caused by the contamination. When I looked at everything that was handed me afterwards, when I went through my notes, that's when I noticed that the learning disabilities in this neighborhood were just astronomical compared to the rest of the town. It was just unbelievable. When I first noticed it, I thought, this can't possibly be what I think it looks like. So I went to my husband and said, you look at this. What do you see? And he says, well, I see a lot of disabilities. I said, yeah. It unnerved me, but more than that, it made me so mad. I was so angry at that point. Concerned Citizens Against Contamination was made up of just about everybody in the neighborhood, and it's always the mothers that come out first. At one point we had about 88 members, and yeah, that's a lot of people in my little house. We contacted Jan Schleckman, a lawyer. He did say that he knew someone from Toxics Action Center that I would want to talk to, and he gave me his name, and I thought, okay. I came home, and I called up Rob Sargent, and I said, this is what's happening. And he said, hold a press conference. Call all the press, get them there. Once you know that they're all coming, then call the town and tell them what you're going to do. So I thought, oh, I can do that. That's easy enough. I called all the newspapers in the area, and they all thought, well, this is great. And they all said, yeah, we'll be there, definitely. And when they were done, I called the town and I said, this is what's going to happen. Having a press conference. It's going to be right outside the Conductor Lab site, right across the street. This can be a good site, a good publicity, or this can be bad publicity. The next day, we got up, we went down there. Everybody and his brother, who was anybody in the town, was there. And they were all in front of the press, patting themselves on the back, saying, we're going to clean this up, we're going to get water down there, those people won't have to pay for anything, this is all going to be done. And I thought, wow, Rob was right, that really worked. So I called him up and said, great, got any more ideas? From that point on, Rob and Matt Wilson worked with me. We just clicked. Just having people that you can bounce off of, that you can say, well, what if I try this? And it was just, I always knew that if I had a question, all I had to do was pick up the phone, and that Matt would be on the other end, and I would get an answer. We would have these meetings with the town and the company. The company would stand up there, and they would say things like, but we make these wonderful wheel bearings that go into wheelchairs. We make these little pieces that go into the heart defibrillators. These things are important, and we're a very clean company. We wouldn't do anything to hurt anybody. And I would always stand up and say, now that you've finished with the fluff, let's get to the nitty-gritty here. Let's get to what we really need to know. How much contamination is on the site, and how bad can it be since it's already ruined all our wells? What are you going to do about it?
Most of those folks had never been in a situation like this before. They've never had to engage with their state officials. They'd never had to address environmental problems before. In Groton, Toxics Action Center brought its whole toolbox to that community to help it in its fight to protect their neighborhood.
They were willing to help us with no cost involved whatsoever. They were willing to come out here and work with us, show us what to do. They were willing to come with us to any meetings that we had and help us through that.
The first thing we did was to help them understand the hazardous waste cleanup law. How do these laws work, and how are they supposed to be put into action to help a community? The second thing that we did is we helped unite the community, helped work with the leadership of the organization so they could speak with authority that they represented the community. The third thing we did is we brought in experts, hydrogeologists. We helped them understand about water flow and that there was a connection between the contamination at INSCO and the neighborhood. And the fourth thing we did is we linked up the Groton mothers and their families with other communities across the state who are dealing with the same problems.
They had like a community of other people who had similar problems. So we were able to get together in groups to discuss our problems and glean from each other what worked and what didn't. It brought a lot of knowledge and confidence.
So the first thing that the Groton families did that was so effective was got quick hookup to town water, paid for by the company, which brought in clean and fresh water into their neighborhood so that they were now protected from any further contamination. The second thing is they got a commitment from the company to do the cleanup of all the TCE in the neighborhood. The third thing is that the town and the families got compensation for the impact of the pollution on their neighborhood. One of the more innovative things that came out of Groton was the state Department of Public Health coming in to do a health study of the neighborhood to identify the connection between the contaminated water and the learning disabilities of the kids. What was unique about this whole program was that the mothers and the community had a real involvement in the development and the implementation of this health study, setting a real standard for health studies to be implemented in the future.
Matt would ask me if I would be interested in helping different other communities, some that were really bad, with children who were literally dying of cancers, and if I could help get them to form committees. So I would pack up all my wares and I would go to these different places and just talk to these people and tell them over and over again that no matter what happens, nothing will be done unless you as the community do it. That means getting out there and knocking on doors. People hate to do that. I'm one of those people. I hate going up to doors and saying, hey, my name is, and this is why I'm here. But I do it because it's important. It needs to be done.
For 25 years, we've been able to come into communities and provide our assistance free of charge. And the reason we've been able to do that is for the generous support of thousands of citizens and residents across New England.
I like to give to the Toxics Action Center every year because without our help, they wouldn't be able to accomplish all the things that they get accomplished throughout the year. A lot of sites would never be cleaned up, and a lot of people would never get the help that they need.